Rob, are we ready? Yes. Right, excellent. Hello, my name is Stephen Cowan. I'm the leader of the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham. Welcome to the February 2023 Cabinet meeting. I have a few housekeeping points. First of all, if the fire alarm goes, either continuously or intermittently, I will adjourn the meeting. And please leave the meeting in an orderly fashion to the nearest exit, which is here, and make your way downstairs, and we assemble outside the building out there. Toilets, or also, if the urge takes you, in the corridor, and the staff will help you in and help you out. I'm now going to confirm the members of the Cabinet who are present for this Cabinet meeting, and that takes me straight to my left, Mr. Councillor Ben Coleman.
Evening.
Alex Sanderson.
Present.
Aura Kwan.
Present.
Wesley Harcourt.
Present.
Andrew Jones. Present. Rowan Ree.
Good evening.
Francis Umay.
Hello.
Sharon Holder. Hello. Rebecca Harvey. We have
Hello.
tuning in. I think we might have Patricia Quigley who tuning in, who's ex officio to the Cabinet. Oh, she sent her apologies. Do we have any other apologies?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. They are the members of the Cabinet. That will then take me nicely into the officers, who is Sharon Lee, our Chief Executive, and Grant Degg, who's the Assistant Director of Legal Services. And there we are. Pardon? Okay. Minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 9th of January 2023. Are they agreed? Are there any apologies for absence? No. Are there any declarations of interest?
Yes, Leader, can I declare an interest in item number 5?
Thank you very much. That is noted. Right, we move straight to item number 4 then, which is petitions. Thank you very much for organising the petition, for coming in. I will explain how it works. I will invite you to take a seat and to address the Cabinet. You have 5 minutes to make the point, and which we will note, and then the Cabinet may ask you questions afterwards if it needs any clarification, and we'll then carry out a deliberation of the points made. So we've got Mr. Tom Holloway, and I'd like to invite you to take your seat. Okay. Okay.
There we are. Okay, good. Hello, and thank you for inviting me to speak with you. I'm Tom. I'm a resident of Hammersmith and Fulham and a canine behaviourist. Firstly, I'd like to say that we are fully behind and extremely grateful to the council to looking to bring in rules to promote responsible dog practices. We just wanted to find a way to have the opportunity to be able to speak with you to be sure that these rules or any in the future have the best chance of achieving their intended goals and are inclusive of all park users and professional dog walkers. Moreover, that the rules do not affect the enjoyment of dog ownership and animal welfare, and that they ultimately lead to well-socialised, more relaxed, better behaved dogs. Therefore, in the next few minutes, I'm going to try and provide examples of how we could all work together to do that, and explain the accredited theory that underscores how dogs' behaviour will be positively impacted by its environment and time with other dogs and its loving family. The first piece of accredited theory we need to understand is to have non-reactive, well-behaved, calm dogs. It is critical that they have adequate early and continued socialization and that they get their essential daily needs met, which means they must have the ability to run off-lead with their own kind in open spaces and sniff each day. With that in mind, to have well-behaved dogs, we need to be trying to increase the ease of socialization through infrastructure, such as pens, and accessibility, such as allowing on-lead, well-behaved dogs to join families they love being with in as many places as we think could be reasonably possible. Out in the park, we do agree that there are some irresponsible individuals who operate with little respect for welfare, safety, and other park users. However, on the whole, the real professionals who are experienced in dog handling and who mostly hold welfare and training qualifications conscientiously walk well-controlled dogs in reasonable numbers. So the next thing that we need to do to have well-behaved dogs is protect the supply of these decent dog walking services to owners. And by protecting the supply, we will then keep their costs down and so help make decent dog walking services accessible to more people. If we do that whilst encouraging professionals to invest in themselves by giving them the ability to walk 5 dogs per person or 8 between 2 at scrubs, but if it's ever more than 4 dogs per person, then that person or company must hold relevant qualifications or the lead walker has to undergo a suitable assessment, then we have a fighting chance of improving the behaviour of dogs in our borough. Now, I'm sure all this brings to mind the tragic death of the Surrey dog walker, Natasha Johnson. So let's have a look at the lessons that can be learnt from that, which are, it is believed that many of these 7 or 8 dogs were on lead. Being on lead causes a lot of tension and frustration, leading to the fact that many dogs are reactive on lead, but not off lead. Therefore, the first lesson from this is when walking groups of dogs, we should be looking to get a good amount of them off lead as soon as possible and not to think that keeping them all on lead is a simple answer. This is an example whereby it's vital that any of us making rules affecting dogs or any law enforcement officer giving out instructions based on a dog's behaviour really understands the nuances of canine behaviour to not make situations worse. The second lesson from this tragic incident was, unlike what we are suggesting, Natasha had no assistance. However, this is unlikely affordable for any qualified dog professional walking less than 8 dogs between 2. Therefore, as we can't leave dogs shut at home too long, we don't have more land and we don't have more daylight, the decent dog walkers can't take smaller numbers whilst delivering the same volume, one suggestion to help owners get their dogs' essential daily needs met and thus improve behaviour is the 5 dogs per person or 8 between 2 rule in scrubs, but only 4 dogs for individuals or companies who are not qualified or assessed or who walk in smaller parks. Now, on the side subject of dog fouling, my study of animal behaviour has shown me that using punitive methods like fines ultimately breaks down cooperation between the receiver and the punisher, particularly when the enforcer for the punishment is not present. Whereas if we at least initially use management and positive reinforcement, like erecting more bins with free bags and putting up more training pens, we encourage people to want to do right. And so in this instance, they are more likely to bag and bin a dog poo despite the enforcer not being present. In conclusion, please do not be too quick to restrict everyone based on one terrible accident and a few irresponsible dog owners and walkers. Instead, work to make punitive methods a last resort, preserve the enjoyment of our inherited responsibility to look after our dogs, and improve dog behaviour through better awareness of and accessibility to early and continued socialisation and long off-lead sniff walks and training. We're here to help if that's useful for you. Thank you for listening.
Well, firstly, can I congratulate you on 4 minutes, 57 seconds, which is, yeah. Yeah, I always respect someone who can deliver a speech on time. Thank you very much for that. We certainly will take you up on your offer of help. I think the more we learn from people, the more our officials learn from people. Like you mentioned, our law enforcement team, then the better service we're able to offer to our residents. So take that as a given. What I'm going to do now is to throw out the questions to different members of the cabinet. I'm going to, which the cabinet member responsible for community safety is Councillor Rebecca Harvey, and the cabinet member responsible for the public realm, which is the streets, the maintenance of the streets, is Councillor Holder. So they may want to ask you some questions first, but I'll throw it out to everybody. But would either of you like to go first on the questions? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, can I ask you, where did the number 5 come from as opposed to 4 or 7 or 6? Why 5?
Sure. So obviously I've been doing this for about 15 years. 3 dogs, it's not affordable. And also actually I tend to find that 3's a crowd. When you start to get more dogs together, they actually tend to stick together and be better behaved because they've got enough mental stimulation and play rather than trying to dart off to other groups. I know that it used to be 6 dogs at Scrubs back in the past, but we now have a higher volume of dogs in the park. And I've based that on the kind of space that there is in Wormwood Scrubs. So, for example, in bigger parks like perhaps Front Way, Cranford Country Park, I actually think 6 per person, but still only a maximum of 8. would be more sensible. But I think 5 is a sensible number in Wormwood Scrubs and takes into account the costs that dog walkers and trainers have as well.
So just so I can clarify, so it's based on your personal experience and what you've observed?
Yes,
Yeah, thank you.
and reviewing other boroughs, councils.
Okay, just on that, if I come in with a question before we call Sharon. So is there I mean, there's obviously standards going in across boroughs across the country. You know, are you saying that 5 should be the standard rather than a lot of boroughs are doing something quite different?
I think it should be based more on the amount of land and the density of people in that land. So if, for example, Scrubs was as populated as Ravenscourt Park is, then I wouldn't suggest the number of 5. But it tends to be pretty, certainly during the winter, actually even in the summer and during the week, it tends to be pretty empty apart from dog walkers. So a higher number seems sensible.
My understanding is that the RSPCA guidelines say that it should be 4 dogs. So I just wondered how you reconcile that with what they're recommending.
Sure. That's obviously their opinion, but I think they're basing that on the fact that the average person isn't qualified and skilled. And what we're saying with 5 dogs is that it has to be someone who is assessed, trained or qualified. So to be honest, if I was a hobbyist dog walker, I probably wouldn't want to take more than 2 myself. And when I started out dog walking before I became a trainer and behaviorist and had all that experience, I absolutely did not start by taking 5 dogs to begin with. But now we need to have better behaved dogs. We need to make sure that dog walking and good dog walking is accessible and affordable, and we have a lot more dogs. So we need to make sure, and there's a lot more costs now with ULEZ and the cost of living. So, and we want to be able to afford to have assistance, and we want to encourage people to invest in themselves. And there's no point them paying for expensive training and going through huge amounts of education and study if they're going to earn exactly the same amount. So it seems like this would be a really good way of positively reinforcing people becoming more skilled and more responsible.
Yeah, just one other question. So do you think that we should then sort of weigh up and balance between what the RSPCA says is a recommended number for, and then weigh that against the cost of doing the business, and one should sort of outweigh the other?
I think that the RSPCA, as far as I'm aware, are not talking about skilled, trained, qualified people. They're talking an average, a dog walker going out. So they're, having to be careful not to go, oh, well, we think you can do 5, and then suddenly realizing there's being an incident. Whereas we're going, okay, well, let's be the borough who actually, encourages people to invest in themselves by having more skilled walkers, if that makes sense.
Okay. Sharon, do you want to come in?
Lastly, Tom, thank you for taking my previous inquiry, because we've spoken before about this. But can I just ask you, just to clarify, and I think you've answered the question, are you willing, after we've analysed the findings from the survey, to have a chat with us so we can go through some of the issues that we've talked about both tonight and previously, and from your experience? Is that okay?
Absolutely. I mean, the main thing from coming here now, I hate the idea of petition. What I really wanted to do is just be able to open a dialogue so that we can, when rules like this are coming in, we're speaking to the professionals, we're speaking to the dog owners, and we're speaking to the people who understand canine behaviour.
Yeah. And I can say we try and get the listening in first. So we tied that into the way we operate with commissions and public policy reviews. So we try and get all of that done first before we get to the point of actually making a decision. This has been to the Policy and Accountability Committee where that, can be reviewed. But I do think you're probably going to do better at trying to make sure we publicise those meetings more and get this right, because sometimes policies can be tweaked or adapted to make them better. But we'll definitely take you up, and I understand you met with Councillor Holder already, and we'll definitely take you up, as I mentioned at the beginning, on working with us and see how we move forward on this. But before I do that, I've got Councillor Alford who wanted to ask a question.
And I'm speaking as a private owner who has dogs or has a dog. One of the things that worries me about some of the wording of this proposal is Now, let me make it very clear, I always clear up after my dog. But it does sound very draconian that they're going to be prosecuted, because what I don't want to happen, and let's face it, people can get very officious, is when I'm wandering down the street with Zeus, somebody stops me and says, have you got a bag? Yes, I always have got a bag. But it's got to be done in a tactful way, rather than people to be frightened when they're taking their dog out. I mean, have you got a bag? The other thing is what we don't have enough of, and I speak passionately, is receptacles to put the bags in. If you've only got to go down to Coal Hill Gardens, it is perpetually overflowing and not cleared. So I would beg and ask, as a councillor, but also as a dog owner, can we please have more bags? And when this is, if it's when enforced, can we be careful about the enforcement? Of course, we want everybody to clear up after their dog. It's important, absolutely vital. But at the same time, what I don't want to find is that when I'm pottering 2 doors down to my neighbour to take my dog for a visit, that I'm stopped because I haven't got a bag.
Yes, well, they're both good points. I think, I remember that advert that was recruiting army people, members of the army about 5-10 years ago, and it's someone very aggressive, and how do you deal with it? And the answer in that advert was the same for our law enforcement team and for the police, which is you try and build a relationship with the person you're trying to police and get them to do the right thing before you actually take action against them. And that is very much the brief of the law enforcement team. As all of us know in this room, there are some people who will not be reasoned with, and we should find them. And that's, I think that's probably the way we do things in Britain, and it sort of works. It's sort of policing with consent. But certainly the law enforcement team, which is the team that will often confront people on this, one of their briefs is to not get themselves into a confrontation, but to make sure that they try and educate. So that's the first thing. The only thing on the second point, which I agree with you, we should be a lot better ways of, I mean, I'm a godfather to a dog, believe it or not. It's in Brooklyn, but and there's not a lot of religious teaching, but I do take the dog, I take her out all the time when I'm up there, and I always make sure the bag is there, and you take it back and put it in. But I do understand the stresses of knowing where to dispose of what's in the bag. That said, I've never met anyone who wants one of those things outside their house. So,
No, but
so we have to. So I think we are what we've asked the officers to do is to look for suitable places that can enhance the opportunity. I think one final thing to say is I remember last year there was a huge increase in the amount of dog fouling. I looked into it a bit with our officials, and it was a 29% increase in dog ownership in Hammersmith and Fulham during the after the pandemic, for obvious reasons. So there is a degree of trying to educate people to make sure they understand the sort of rights and responsibilities.
If I could come back, yes, it is all about education. I mean, as you all laugh at me, but I do love my animals, but it is about being a responsible owner. And regretfully, with people getting so many dogs during the COVID, they haven't actually had the socialization, which is one thing that dogs must have. Yeah. And the knowledge and dealing with other people for the interaction of always clearing up afterwards.
Absolutely. Look, we're very pro dog, so let's not be, most people in my experience are very responsible owners, as Tom Holloway said. So and I think that's accepted. But laws normally aren't there to deal with irresponsible people. It's the irresponsible ones, and whilst that's a minority wherever they are, then that we need to give people powers to address sometimes persistent behavior. But I'm absolutely on side with all the sentiments being expressed, and I'm very keen that we make sure that there's a soft landing on this. We work closely with resident dog owners and experts such as yourself to manage this. Is there anyone else who wants to come in before we decide what we're going to do? Is there any comments anyone wants to make, or before we decide what we're going to do? Who said that?
Me.
Sharon, yeah.
Can I just make one comment for the record? We can now, unlike previously, dispose of our little bags with the poo in them in all of our bins, whereas previously we had these little bins up on lampposts. We don't need to do that anymore. So for the record, people can dispose of their dog waste in any of the bins in Hammersmith and Fulham now. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, as you're the only person here, is there any other question you've got for us or anything?
Just if you guys are all discussing, I've done you a little sheet each, if you want, just
Okay.
going over each of the points of the thing in case it's helpful,
you-
because I appreciate there's a lot of
Yeah, if you
stuff.
could pass it around, we can have a quick
Just
look
thought
at
that
it.
might be useful for your discussion.
Thank you for doing that. If we just have a quick break of 3 minutes, I wouldn't normally do this, but given you've done the sheet, 3 minutes, where we just have a chance to look at the sheet. All right, so we'll suspend the cabinet meeting while we all read your sheet. Right, I'll restart the meeting for the record, so we'll kick back in with the meeting. Any other questions on this? Councillor Sanderson?
Thank you. Just a small one. So here my dual hat of the chair of Wormwood Scrubs Charitable Trust. Thank you for this, Tom. It's really helpful. I have to say I slightly disagree with 5 per person on the Scrubs, because we already have issues of people having far more than 5 dogs, which we're trying to deal with at the moment. And I would say they're not always the most trained to deal with that number. So I think we're working very hard to try and make sure that we have got responsible dog walkers on site. So I appreciate it's a much larger site, but it's also one with far less oversight of it as well, because as you say, it is quite sparsely utilised during the winter months in particular. So I would be more comfortable with it remaining at 4 instead of 5, because I think there's a higher risk for 5 if you've got an inexperienced dog walker there. And I think that's something, the feedback that we've had from local community members as well, that they would rather have stayed at 4 dogs rather than 5. Thank you. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate that we are not suggesting 5 dogs for the average person. It is only if you are a qualified, trained professional, and that is a way of encouraging people to invest in themselves. So we have less irresponsible dog walkers. Of course, we can go around and just go, right, you're responsible, you're out, which, you know, in a way I'd say is great as well. But I just thought that this might be a way of getting 1, more dogs needs met, and 2, encouraging people to do it. So trying to achieve our goals through a kind of positive reward way rather than punitive.
No, thank you. Completely understand that.
Great. Is there any other comments, questions? In which case, look, what way I think we should go forward on this is, I think we've widely consulted on this, and we have relied a lot on, looking up national standards, and this has been something we're sensitive to, because we know an awful lot of our residents, who are our boss at the end of the day, have dogs, and they all love their dogs as members of their family, as I do with my god dog. So, they are, the level of emotional attachment to dogs is very evident, and we're certainly very supportive of that. We think this will help us But what I'm saying to you is we are open-minded to looking at how we make it work in practice. And so I found this very interesting, and I found your offers of help very kind. And we will take that, we'll definitely take you up on that. And we will keep a watching eye on this brief. But for now, because we want to make progress in how we manage a situation which is getting bigger, and there are many different types of dog owners, and some people, a minority, a very small minority, you know, that's where we need to focus the attention we're putting in. So we'll take this forward now, is my recommendation, and then we will work with you and see if we can take you up on some of your kind offers to work with our work with our officers and do other things. So, but I can't thank you enough for coming in. It's very good to get public engagement in these issues, and we always learn when there is. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks. Okay, on that note then, we will then move back to the agenda, and that means putting my reading glasses on. Please, can I ask everyone to note the comments of Tom Holloway, the petitioner, and the nature of the conversation, and take on board the advice that's being given. Is everyone happy to do that?
Yep.
That's formally noted. And in which case we move on to item 5, a housing revenue account, budget, rents, service charges for 2023, 2024. Councillor Holder, you've issued a declaration of interest in this. Can I hand over to you, Councillor May, to introduce?
Thank you, Leader. So we have made a commitment to improve homes as well as invest in them in the coming years. And at the moment, what we're doing is spending £1 million a week to improve homes, as well as investing in making sure these homes are energy efficient. And so over the next 12 years, that will be an investment of more than £700 million. In addition to that, we're committed to building more homes and have committed to building more than 3,000 new affordable homes in the next few years. And we also need to strengthen the engagement and services that we're offering to residents to create a service that residents would be proud of. Now, in order to do that, it's really important to make sure that the housing revenue account maintains financial resilience. And Councillor Ree is going to talk a bit more about the intentions and plan for this council to do that.
Thank you very much. Yes, so obviously it's been a difficult time for the economy over the last few years. We're aware that a lot of people are suffering through the increased cost of living. And so for that reason, we will only be increasing the rents by 4.4% rather than the 7% that we're permitted to do so by government. We believe that in doing this, we can ensure that the housing revenue account remains sustainable and resilient, as Councillor Ume said, while also allowing us to make the investment that's necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions on this item? Councillor Alford?
I think everybody's aware that I have great concerns about the HRA account, so I'll be as brief as I can. Last year, or this current year we're in, we had to make enormous savings, but they weren't savings. They actually were income being raised. So I do think it's an unforced or false way of describing things as saying we're making savings, when in fact what we're not doing is making savings. We're actually having to raise the income in order to make the account balance. I think it would be a fairer way of describing it, to be honest. You may not like that, but I'm also concerned we've had to make, and it was actually more than 3.8 million you had to make this year. Is there really any certainty that it is only going to be the supposedly 1 point something this coming year? Because with all the inflation, all the other things that are going on, there is a fragility about this balance, this budget, which really worries me. So I'll make it as simple as that.
Yeah. Firstly, I would like to answer those questions. Have you got more questions? Is that? Okay. So firstly, yes, I can make the commitment. We're not going to put council tax, we're not going to put rates up again. That's it. And we are very aware of this cost of living crisis. So balancing the cost of living crisis with our need to raise funds to invest in housing stock is a careful balance, but we think we've got that right in the figure that you have before you. And that's the first thing. In terms of the savings, I think I made those points when I was leader of the opposition. In reality, it's local government speak. It's how local government is. We wouldn't in business talk about savings when we're making revenue increases. And if we are making savings, we're generally talking about business, but that's how it is in local government. I don't think we're unusual in using that language. I agree with you. It would be better to be a bit more like Unilever than a local council, but we're on that journey. But that's the language that's used. But point is, the substance of the issue is that we are at the moment putting a very large amount of investment into repairing housing stock that was not for a long time managed well or looked after, and indeed in many cases was being lined up to be sold off, as you know, with the West Kensington and Gibbs Green estates, but other estates that were offered for sale. So when we got them back, they weren't in great repair. So there is a backlog of investment that needs to go forward, and that is something we're very cognizant of. And secondly, we only got out of the contract with Mighty, which was a 10-year contract, 18 months, 2 years ago. And anyone who knocked on a door and heard the words Mighty would know full well that that was not a successful contract. What was weak about the contract, because Mighty, I'm sure, would say they're a good company and they're doing the best. What was weak is it was structurally underfunded for reasons that I think were linked into the council house sell-offs. So it was a flawed contract from the get-go, and and it was a bad contract. There was a break clause for them to get out of it. They didn't like us. There was no break clause for us to get out of it if we didn't like them, which is one of the many problems we had to find. So the way we got out of it was to be fairly contractual with them in demonstrating the weaknesses. And we were pleased to get out of it, but then that was a challenge in itself. And then shortly after that, we had COVID and other sort of challenges. So there's not to be said that there is an awful lot of challenges in the HRA budget. And this is something, we believe people should have a council house, it should be secure tenure, and it should be a good, decent place to live. And that is a priority for us. And that's Councillor May, backed by Councillor Ree, who's working on clever ways of how we finance this. It's our number one thing for us, for our council house residents, tenants, leaseholders, and those freeholders that you have on some estates. Okay, did you have any follow-up?
Couple, and I'll keep it quick. One of the things that is concerning me, and I'm sure it's concerning you as well, is the cost of the service charges and the way they're going up. Now, there are some people in sheltered housing whose costs have gone up astronomically, and I'm particularly worried about their vulnerability. And bless whoever that was. I notice here on page 58, because I'm looking at that we're charging for 10.90 for tenants' personal heating. Why is there a differential for leaseholders to have to pay more? Is that very equitable?
So the numbers have all been put together according to the law. But what I would say is if you look over the last 8 years, we've kept leaseholder charges extremely low.
Yes.
And, as I mentioned earlier, that does have a point, because the reason you have leaseholder charges is because you want to put money into the HRA to carry out your planned and reactive maintenance programs. So that's just how it is. I would say, when I was cabinet member for housing and you were too, my view, and I say this to officers, I thought there was an inherent prejudice against leaseholders.
I've always
ever since, almost a resentment of a right to buy.
Yeah.
And I did a lot to stamp that out. I'm sure you did.
I did
too.
Yes.
So both of us, I think, share that view. That's not there at the moment. There is a genuine support for leaseholders. There's a genuine recognition that many of those leaseholders are facing a cost of living crisis. And there is a genuine understanding that, I think, at a more macro level, the economy, despite what Liz Truss put in the Telegraph yesterday, is in a very bad state, largely because of a bunch of factors: Brexit, the war in Ukraine, in any particular, Liz Truss's mad budget, and I think, 13 years of structural austerity, which has really damaged the public sector. And that's what you could read in any mainline newspaper. So there's no easy options at the moment in putting together finance, I would just say.
No, I didn't.
And that's what you see reflected in this document.
I've got one more comment and then you will have peace and quiet. What I am concerned about, and I think, I hope we're all concerned about it, is the poor performance of our contractors, particularly in repairs. it doesn't seem, and I've had some experience this weekend of having to deal with a very difficult case. It's not getting any better. I know we appear to be throwing an awful lot of money at it, but I don't see any improvement, and I wish I was by this time. So I would make a plea. Can everybody please keep on top of the contractors, because I don't think there's improvement.
Yeah. Well, until recent years, people would often tell me I was looking young for my age, but that all ended because of the housing problems we've had, which are structural problems that have long been there. Lots of stock wasn't prepared and managed. We had a very long contract with Mighty, and the HRA wasn't in a great state. So fixing all of those things has been quite complicated. As we fix them, two things happened: COVID and the war in Ukraine, and Brexit have both reduced our ability to get labour. So everyone knows you used to be able to get a Polish plumber and a sort of Romanian electrician. If you talk to any builder, they're saying it's very hard getting labour, and that's the same for our suppliers. And then costs have gone up significantly with inflation, but in building, inflation is running at 30% in some cases on some materials. So all of that's having an impact on the contractors. Now, I don't say that to make an excuse for the contractors. We're very fortunate that Sharon Lee, our chief executive, is personally managing this issue. That's how much of a priority we take on it. That's what's in all my meetings with Sharon, and getting contractors to deliver on the contract, making sure that customers are put first, making sure that work's done is a priority. It's not happening in every case. And some of the backlogs we're finding out about, we're still working through now. But I assure you that, we're not prepared to see this going on. It isn't, we are working our way through a very challenged situation for the reasons I described. And we're putting a lot of resource and dedication into this. And our top official is leading the project for us. Sorry, no more questions on this report. Is this report agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Revenue, budget and council tax, which is for me to talk about. Well, any glance at any newspaper will tell you the economy is a mess and that people are suffering the worst cost of living crisis in most of our adult lifetimes. And that does put particular pressure, not just on the services that we have to run, with rampant inflation, pushing up costs, difficulties recruiting labour, challenges with wages, and so many other different fronts, but also with how we offer value for money to the residents. And we aim to be the best value for money council in the country, which is why we're proud to still have the third lowest council tax in the country. And as Councillor Ree has often said in meetings, we're very proud that our council tax support system only has 52% of people who pay council tax, which means 48% of people are not paying full council tax because we are supporting them, recognizing that those with the broadest shoulders can carry the weight of those in the weakest position. And that's what you see reflected on this report. I would say that I have been the council leader here for 9 years, and whilst it's always been challenging since austerity came in, and I would remind everybody that in 2010, our budget was £184 million, our revenue budget in total, and now it's 125, roughly speaking. And that is a huge cut. Now, having been a businessman all my life, I do not know a business that could lose a third of its revenue and maintain its services. And the good thing about Hammersmith and Fulham is we're not just maintaining our services, we've introduced new services, free adult social care. Any of us who've ever had an elderly parent or a friend suffering from dementia or some other illness, or have a disabled friend who needs support, will know the challenges they face and the cost they face. And what we have said, irrespective of your wealth, we will be on your side and provide you this with services at this critical point in your life. Children, as the BBC recently covered in Hammersmith and Fulham, get free breakfast in our primary schools. I'm deeply pleased that the Labour government has copied that policy and will be rolling it out across the country should the British people give us a mandate in 18 months to 2 years' time. But again, it's a groundbreaking policy that gives everybody a helping hand at feeding the thing they're most cherishing in their life, their children. We have a law enforcement team at a time when we've got record police cuts, gang crime, and many other things. We've got 72 new law enforcement officers patrolling our streets, keeping people safe and looking out for everyone in our borough. And the most vulnerable people are children being press ganged into gangs. And we have a team of over 30 with police officers. Again, a groundbreaking Hammersmith and Fulham policy that is going after criminals. And I am very pleased that within its first 3 months of being set up, it was intrinsic because the nature of the crime economy to having some 600 county lines gangs people arrested across England, Wales, and Scotland. That's the nature of modern crime. It is organized better than it's ever been organized before. All of these services are new, and yet many parts of the country, people are cutting services and charging for more services, things that haven't happened in Hammersmith and Fulham. So this, I think, is a huge tribute to Sharon Lee and to our officers. I can see Savinda at the back. I can see the fantastic as ever Rowan Ree sitting at the table. And we have a SLT committed to bringing in services that are better than before on budget. That's what value for money looks like. That's what being on your side looks like. That's what this budget has written through the narrative on every single page. That's my introduction to this. I'm happy to take questions. In that case then, is this item, are there any comments? Is this item agreed? Thank you very much. Four-year capital programme, and I hand over to the cabinet member for finance reform, the already, I've already given him an introduction, Rowan Ree.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm not sure I can live up to that. So this is a paper setting out our capital budget for the next 4 years. It includes over £500 million worth of spending on things like investing in housing repairs, investing in our housing stock, our civic campus, decarbonising the borough, and the education city development in the north of the borough. We are shaping the borough for the better, and this budget goes a long way to doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Councillor Ree? Any comments? In which case is that item agreed? Thank you very much. Item number 8 is back to you, Rowan.
Thank you very much. This is the third quarter capital monitor report. It's a fairly technical paper. It comes to Cabinet every few months or so. This is just to show progress throughout the annual cycle and to note any changes, including the money for bridge repairs and the £5 million reduction in expenditure.
Is any questions? Any comments? Is that item agreed? Agreed it is. I move next then to item number 9, which is the Treasury Management. And you guessed it, it's our own Rowan Ree.
Thank you very much, Leader. So this report will be coming to the full council later this month. I did just want to take the opportunity to say a big thank you to all of our staff working in Treasury Management. Perhaps it's not an area that we talk about a great deal, but they've been incredibly successful this year in terms of managing council borrowing and making sure that our money's in the best possible places. It's been a hugely turbulent year in terms of global markets and the money markets. And our team have been able to manage our money very prudently during this period and have contributed massively to the council administration. This sets out our strategy for the coming year. And as I said, we presented it for council later this month.
Excellent. And thank you for mentioning the officers. They have done excellent work on this. Are there any questions to Councillor Ree? No, Francis? No, you've got none. Okay. Any comments? All right. Is that agreed? Great. Now on to item number 10, sourcing strategy. Councillor Ree.
Thank you very much. So this report sets out how we are looking to improve our procurement of goods and services across the council. This proposes putting in place a more transparent and efficient system, which ultimately will deliver better value for our residents.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions? Any comments? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Item number 11, Civic Campus Enhanced Investment. Over to Andrew Jones.
Thanks very much. We have obviously already talked about this in a sense in the capital programme, but this report is here to bring forward the final budget on the Civic Campus. I want to start, the report makes a point that I think is really important by thanking the officers who've been involved with this, John and Philippa in particular. This has been trailed over a couple of years because we obviously knew there would be increased budget for the Civic Campus a long time ago. We knew this in 2019, but we came back to Cabinet in 2020 to say so. And the most important thing that I would emphasise in this report is the success of officers in taking 80% of the bill of costs into a fixed budget at that time in 2020 during the pandemic. Otherwise, we would be experiencing quite a little bit more, I think, increase in the cost than we have in this final budget. So I think that's a major success for our officers in actually, obviously, we were some way through the project when a significantly increased inflationary environment came in our direction. Since then, of course, I hardly need emphasize inflation has a whole set of sort of headwind factors in relation to the project, many of which were foreseen, some perhaps in terms of the last year and the economic turbulence not quite as foreseen have come our way. So we have been working hard in sort of finalising these costs. And what you see, which is already, as I said, discussed in the capital programme, is the final budget position for the Civic Campus project that gets us to completion. Councillor Ree might want to add things further on the overall relationship to the capital programme, but the report sets out the additional areas of budget which gets us to the Civic Campus. I would also make the point that over time, the scheme, once complete, is profit making in the sense it generates surplus, so it pays back over time, just to give a sort of broader perspective on the finances. But as I said, we've known this was coming for some time, and I'd like to congratulate the officers once again on the work that's gone through over the last few years in an economic environment out of our control that has not been very favourable. We talked about wider inflation. My final point, in the construction industry, we're experiencing around the project inflation in excess of 20% on some of the costs in line with the sector due to labour shortages, supply and material shortages, and so on. So I think the officers have done a very good job to get us to this position. Thank you.
Okay, right. On that one, any comments or questions? In which case, is that item agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Next, one you've all been waiting for, the Highways Works Contract Framework Extension. Over to you, Councillor Holder.
Thank you, Leader. This 5-year contract was awarded to FM Conways Limited, which ends and expires on the 31st of March this year. Despite the volatility in the construction industry and the economic climate, high inflation, fuel costs, etc., the contractor has agreed to extend the existing contract for a further 3 years to mitigate against expected cost increases to this council.
Any comments? Any questions? Well, all I would just say is, Sharon Lee, our chief executive, is a very hard taskmaster, and she was praising this contractor recently, Conways, and I was very surprised to see her doing so because I know that she likes to hold people's feet to the fire. So that is high praise indeed, I think, and therefore I'm glad that we've got this framework extension. If there's, as I've already asked for questions and comments, I will ask if this item is agreed. Can I ask everybody in the Cabinet to note the forward plan of key decisions? And then that takes us nicely then to the end of the meeting. So I would wish you, it's a beautiful sunny day today. I hope tomorrow is the same, and I wish you a good evening.